Oh. The problem with a typewriter is, well, when you're trying to edit the text after it's been committed to paper. Now, of course, ideally, the paper copy would be the final stage. And that, of course, is what the word processor is all about. You can make all your changes before you commit yourself.
Well, this is a BBC Micro running a package called Wordwise. We've used the B because it lets us show the screen more clearly, but there are word processing packages with similar features for just about every micro on the market. Well, the first thing to note with any word processor is there are two ways of working. One to enter and edit the text, the straightforward typing, what I'm doing at the moment, and the other is for commands or instructions to tell the software what to do with the finished product. And we have a list of them here. We could save the text, we could print it out, etc., etc. As far as the computer's concerned, it's as if you're in two separate rooms. With this package, it's easy to see which room or mode you're in. You can switch or toggle between the two. The screen layout is quite different, and the various possibilities are selected from this menu here. But with some word processors, you have to type those commands in. Right, well, let's see how the word processor helps you write. I'll move into the writing mode, and that's one key depression on almost every system that you find. And as you can see, I'm working on a bit of a spoof letter here. I'll add a few more words in. I've been looking for a new job for 5 years and cannot find... Now, one of the things you find here, if I was typing here on an ordinary typewriter, the bell would ring to indicate the end of the line. I'd have to hit a character turn to go on to the next line. But the software does take care of this. Cannot find one, and it doesn't split the word, it puts the word completely on the next line. Now, that's called word wrap, and it's a feature of all word processors. It means you can just go on typing without looking at the screen. But the word processor really comes into its own when you want to correct your mistakes. And the key that does this is the cursor, this little flashing bar here, the cursor. And it can be moved around using the arrow keys. So I have made a mistake up here. I just move the cursor over onto it, put it underneath it, and I want to replace that. So I go into overtype mode, I replace the F with an R, and it's simple as that. You'd never know that the F had ever been there. But word processors can do far more than just correct typing errors. You can make much more fundamental changes. Suppose I wanted to actually insert a word in here. I'll go down to this line here and position it. Now I'm going to go into insert mode. There's always two modes here, one to overtype what you've written and one to insert some new text. So I wish to apply for a job as a journalist. And as I'm typing this, automatically the words are being wrapped around and put on the next line down. Well, what about a major change? Perhaps I'd like to move the bottom paragraph in between the two first paragraphs, and that's fairly straightforward. I take the cursor down again, I put a marker in there, I put a marker at the end of the passage or text that I want to move, and then position the cursor again right on the line where I want it to be, and then move the text. And there I've got my letter fairly well structured. I could just as easily delete a paragraph or insert it twice or whatever. Now, if that was all the word processor did, it would still be worth having, but there's much, much more. For example, suppose you wanted to change a word every time it appeared. Now, in the last paragraph, there's two no's in there. Now, I might want to change that. So I go into the command mode, and I've got a search and replace here. Now, this says global or selective, G or S. Global means I replace every time the phrase appears, and selective means it will give me a choice to check each time. Well, I'm going to check, so I'll put an S. Please enter the search string. Well, I want to search for the times when no appears. That's no, and I type that one in there. And it's going to ask me what I'd like to replace it by. And I think I'd like to replace the no by am cog no sent with. That's a nice phrase to put in my letter. And am cognizant with will replace no. Now, if I hit the key, it asks me here, do I want to replace the no here? And I am cognizant with the difference between buffered and obfuscated. Sounds really quite pompous and should improve the letter no end. So I'll say yes to that. And down here, it's asking me, do I want to replace that no? Well, who work for you am cognizant with doesn't make any sense, so I'll say no to that one. And there is my letter. It's looking quite reasonable. Of course, this is really only useful, this replacement, when you have a long letter with lots and lots of changes. And depending on the software you're using, Well, there's plenty of other things I could actually do with this letter. But what you can't do is switch off the computer and come back tomorrow and expect that the letter will still be there. At the moment, the letter only exists in the computer's memory, right in there. So it must be put somewhere safe whilst the computer is switched off. In this case, we're going to put it onto disk. So I go back into the command mode. One, to say the text, it asks me to enter a file name. I'll call the file Mac. And the light comes on, and I can just hear it writing onto the disk. And that's saving the letter. Well, computers do go wrong, or you can even make a mistake yourself, so it's worth saving your work every 10 minutes or so. So this letter is ready to print. To make it easier to read, the software gives us 40 characters or 40 letters to the line, but it prints out at 80, and we can see what it looks like by pressing one key. And there it is. Now we can see exactly what the letter really looks like. Of course, we could alter the width to anything we want before printing it out.
Well, you can get used to the quirks of almost any word processing software, but what the finished letter looks like on paper depends on the sort of printer you buy. Basically, there are two sorts, daisy and dot. A daisy wheel contains a wheel like this, which has all the letters and the numbers on it, so it can give you perfect type. They're very reliable, these machines, and they're getting cheaper. This particular one, this Juki, costs about £250. But one problem can be this, the noise. It clatters quite unbearably. Well, I get shot of that, I think. That's all I can stand. And the other thing is they aren't really designed for pictures or graphs. So if you want a more versatile printer, then you'll need a dot matrix. Now this type uses a series of dots to make up the letters. As you can see, the problem with this sort is the slightly speckled effect. There are dot matrix printers that get round this by double striking. They're called NLQ, or near letter quality, and they can look quite good. This particular one is a brother, and it costs only about £110. And here is the variety of things you can get from it. There are different widths, different boldnesses and so on, even italics. So, a resume of what you'll need to start word processing. If you've already got a computer, then you'll need a reasonably clear monitor. Well, a black and white one will cost upwards of about £80. You'll also need a disk system. This is quite an expensive setup here, but they start at about £100. You can just about get by with cassette, but it's terribly, terribly slow. Then you'll need a printer and, of course, the software itself. That's anything from about £5 to £100. Yes, it all adds up, but not to the prohibitive amount that it used to. And if you're starting with nothing, you could get a complete word processing system for as little as £400.
Next week, we'll be looking at one of those cheap systems and the more professional word processing equipment with Lynn McTaggart of Which Computer magazine. This coming Monday, the 27th of October, is the day the city changes the way it's been trading shares for almost 200 years. The new stock exchange is fully electronic, and for 2 years now, the city has been pumping money into computer technology to be ready. Computer Journalist of the Year, Steven Arkell, now reports on the city's greatest technology race.
Stockbrokers need a constant flow of information to give them a competitive edge over other dealers in the stock market. Machines like this were the state of the art 100 years ago, when Excel installed the very first financial network here in the City of London. The rules of the game have altered very little since then. But from the 27th of October, all that will change radically, and so will the technology that goes with it. It's called the Big Bang.
Hello, Weddles. They're not in 100 at the moment.
The winners in this new order will have one thing in common, computer power.
You dealing, Simon? You dealing, Burma?
BP I'm doing here. I'll offer you 180 at 74. No, BP, I'm dealing in BP.
Because in the future, it will only be possible to keep up with the market with the help of the microprocessor. The right to deal on the stock exchange floor used to be bestowed by an exclusive committee of stock exchange members. In short, it was a monopoly, and the government didn't like it. So the stock exchange was forced to put its house in order. From October the 27th, any company with the right financial credentials from anywhere in the world can join the London Stock Exchange. The new rules will bring it into line with other trading centres like New York and allow it to become part of a worldwide share trading network. That means that British stockbrokers will not only have to compete with foreign brokers, but also with their technology. And the technology war has only just started.
Across these two dealing floors, we have approximately 650 dealing desks. We've invested in the region of £18 million in technology purely for the dealer desks alone.
We're currently on the verge of installing a far larger processor, the IBM Sierra, which will take up 3 or 4 times the area you now see before you, and it will enable us to move into areas such as 24-hour global trading so that we can trade on a 24-hour basis in London, Tokyo and New York.
But the city hasn't found getting the right hardware and software that easy. Stockbrokers Quilter Goodison had to abandon their Big Bang technology when they found that it wouldn't cope with the expected increases in trading volumes. And Horgavet has had problems getting enough lines off British Telecom to connect to the stock exchange computer. In fact, even the stock exchange itself hasn't exactly set a shining example.
The traded options situation, I think, received the most publicity. The situation essentially was where the traded options market was based on a system of networked IBM PCs. An additional PC was brought in to cope with increased volumes, and the testing procedures, I think, were found to be inadequate, such that when the 5th PC was connected to the network, the whole thing fell over.
Whatever the problems, from the 27th of October, stockbrokers will be communicating with the stock exchange electronically. This is the basic technology they will need to do a day's work.
Right in the middle, the voice communication system, push-button dialing, immediate contact to all dealers and clients through exchange lines, private wires. On the left-hand side of the desk, we have all the information services, one keyboard, any range of information services through any number of screens. The dealer would sit and watch this information, seeing price movements and details of any news in the market that would actually affect prices and market conditions. On the right-hand side of the desk, as soon as the dealer has done a deal, he inputs that straight into the dealing system. Details of the deal and every price movement automatically is sent straight through to the stock exchange system. Then finally, on the right-hand side of the desk, a personal computer. This would be used for analytical purposes, decision support systems. You'll appreciate at the present time the screen's blank because obviously our software is somewhat confidential.
This screen would give a broker quick analysis on whether a particular share is worth buying. The software behind it is kept secret, as good computer analysis can give a broker a substantial edge over the competition. But Cambridge consultants agreed to show us an advanced system that they are now developing. Asked about buying 9,000 IBM shares, the program will give the broker a breakdown of IBM's recent performance, followed by an assessment of how difficult the deal is to execute. It supports its conclusion with reasons, in this case that because the order is a small one, and because there are sellers about, it is easy to do. Systems like this can easily be converted to deal by themselves, without any human intervention at all. Trading by computer, program trading as it is called, is already happening in New York and was partly responsible for the collapse in share prices this autumn. For example, the New York firm of Morgan Stanley already has a computer which trades by itself without a broker even touching it. One way or another, it won't be long before program trading comes here to London. So the most immediate impact of the Big Bang will be to introduce foreign ways of doing things. Japanese brokers Nomura are set to shake up the city by exposing it to the expertise of their sister company, NCC, the largest software house in Japan. With a communications network which circles the world, Nomura will be able to deal around the clock from Tokyo. Competition like this will soon sort out which brokers know how to deal and which have a great deal to catch up on.
Last Saturday, when the city ran a full dress rehearsal for the Big Bang, 2 brokers were forced to send out messages saying they couldn't join in because their systems weren't working. Let's hope they do better next Monday. Until next Friday, good night.